Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Crocker's first Thursday night in live broadcast. Tonight, we are offering a sketch night, The Splendor of Germany. My name is Houghton Kinsman, and I'm the Adult Education Coordinator here at the Crocker Art Museum. I'm really excited to be here with you all tonight. At this stage, I was chatting with one of the Brians from marketing, and they were saying I should throw something funny in here. So he mentioned, why not say something along the lines of, you've been listening to a lot of new wave music over the last few days. But then I realized I have been, so I thought instead I would try and dispel any rumors that I'm not wearing pants by saying that I am. So it's been a really interesting last month. April's been a real learning curve, transitioning from physical programming in the museum to turning it into digital virtual content. And so I'm really excited to be here at the end of the month with a live broadcast. So I want to thank you all once again for joining us. And I'm excited to be exploring the Splendor of Germany exhibition, and in particular, self-portraiture with our public programs coordinator, Brianna Gammon. Brianna, how are you?
I'm great. Houghton, how are you?
Good. It's nice to see a friendly face. It's been a while.
It has.
What have you been up to?
Probably more Netflix watching than I'd like to admit.
Okay.
Taking walks, hanging out with my cats, all that good stuff.
Cool. I stopped by the museum today to pick up an Ethernet cable, and I saw Darren and Kevin, the security manager and IT manager, and they say hello. It's nice to see familiar faces again.
Oh, it's so good to see them. I got to see them just the other day.
I'm excited to see what you have in store for us tonight.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Okay, we'll be back with you in a few seconds.
All right.
So for those of you that don't know, Brianna Gammon has put together the fantastic Global Rhythms digital concert with Jessica Fischer, which went live this month. So if you haven't had a chance to check that out, I highly recommend you head over to our YouTube page and subscribe. The more subscribers, the better. And then check it out and let us know what you think. So for this evening's event, Sketch Night, as I mentioned earlier, we're taking a trip to the Splendor of Germany 18th century drawings from the Crocker Art Museum exhibition, which was organized by Crocker curator William Brazil. I caught up with William and got a few of his thoughts on the show, which are posted on the Crocker's blog, The Oculus. The blog, link to the blog and to the YouTube page should be in the video description on both Facebook Live and YouTube Live. So feel free to check that out. And I want to encourage you all, as you are following along with Brianna's, to add in some comments. Let us know how you're doing, how your drawings are coming along. The more interaction, the better. So just a little bit of brief information or background on the exhibition. So selected from the Crocker Art Museum's renowned collection of German drawings, one of the finest and earliest in the United States. The Splendor of Germany 18th century drawings from the Crocker Art Museum examines the major developments in German draftsmanship over the course of the 18th century, with artists such as Johann Wolfgang Baumgartner, Anton Raphael Mengs, and Johann Heinrich Wilhelm Tischbein. Wow, that one's a mouthful. The exhibition celebrates the inventive beauty of German art and the flowering of the Baroque to measured neoclassicism. So for Sketch Night in particular, we've chosen to focus on Johann Gottlieb Prestel's self-portrait, which I will pull up for you now. Please bear with me. Okay, so now you should all be able to see. This is a self-portrait of Johann Gottlieb Prestel. So Prestel was a painter and reproductive printmaker working in Nuremberg and Frankfurt am Main. This artwork is part of the Crocker's permanent collection. And as William mentioned in a recent tour of the exhibition, in addition to this portrait, the show includes landscapes by Prestel's wife, son, and daughter. So one of the reasons we decided to focus on this self-portrait and explore self-portraiture with you is, as we all shelter in place and are sort of working in a heightened virtual sense, where our image stares back at us constantly from Zoom, WebEx, or Teams meetings, or YouTube Live. And never in my life would I've imagined that I would be a vlogger, but here I am. So we thought it'd be interesting to explore these experiences through drawing. So take some time, think a little bit about your experience on Teams, your experience in the virtual realm, and then just think about how that has impacted your image. Like I said, I had to make clear early on that I am wearing pants. We all have a different way. It's thinking about our appearance in a different way, thinking about our image in a different way, thinking about our identity in a different way. It's all very interesting things to think about. But I also want to point out that this is a great opportunity to have fun. So call some friends, log on with them, share drawings with them. As I mentioned earlier, interact with us. I'm excited to see how this all turns out. So without further ado, I'll turn it back over to you, Brianna.
All right. Thanks, Houghton. So before we get started, I wanted to show you guys what materials I'm using. And if you don't have all the same ones, it's totally fine. Anything that you can draw with, paper of any kind, markers, pens, pencils, that's totally fine. We just want to get you guys drawing. So I have a few different pencils here, and they range from 2H to 6B. I don't have the full range on me today. There's a lot more, as many people who've drawn probably already know. But those numbers and letters just talk about the hardness or softness of the lead. It's nice to have a good range of the pencils because you can get different value from them, as well as maybe not showing every line you might want to have on there. So to get started, I thought we would do something a little fun and relaxed and maybe not as intimidating as jumping straight into a detailed self-portrait. So one way I like to warm up when I'm drawing is with a blind contour drawing. And what that means is that I'm going to be drawing my face. I have a mirror right over here, just off screen from you guys, that I'll be looking at. I'm not going to look down at my paper at all until I'm done drawing. If you've never done this before, it's going to feel a little bit weird, but you really, really want to fight any urge you have to look down at what you're drawing. It kind of ruins the whole effect. So I'm going to draw with my charcoal pencil here because I want it to be nice and dark so that you guys can see it from up there. So I'm all situated. I've got my mirror here. You can use a mirror, or you could take a selfie on your phone or laptop and work from a picture. That's totally okay, as long as you're just looking at the image and not at your paper.
Does this look good enough, Brianna?
Oh, yeah. Houghton, you should do one too.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll join in.
So I'm going to try not to pick up my pencil. Everything's going to look a little bit weird at the end, and that's totally okay. That's kind of just what this is about. It's to focus on the lines, the forms that you're making. Earrings. I'm ignoring the fact that I have glasses on a little bit because that makes things really hard to draw. Okay. I think I'm done. Wow. Doesn't it look just like me?
Pretty good.
Here, I'll get a little bit closer so that you guys can see. This is what we've got. Spot on, right? Yeah. So if you're following along with us and you made a contour drawing, put it in the comments so we can see what you made as well, and so we can all share it just like we would if we were at the museum doing sketch night as normal. So now that we're a little bit warmed up, oh wait, Houghton, did you do a drawing?
I did.
Can we see it?
Not very good though.
Perhaps we needed a bit more time.
That's why I'm here to provide the color commentary and not teach the drawing class. I'll leave that up to you, Brianna.
Okay, fair enough. So a lot of times when we're sketching, it's hard to figure out where to start. So what I always like to suggest is that we get the basic shapes of your form down first. So with a face, it's very easy to find your first shape. And that's going to be the roundness of your head. So again, I'm going to draw with a nice dark charcoal pencil so you can all see. But you might want to start with something more like a 2H or an HB. That'll be a lighter mark. That way you can erase any strange markings or guiding lines that you might not want in your picture at the end.
And Brianna, while you start working on these shapes, could you talk a little bit about how it sort of corresponds to what we're looking at with Prestel's self-portrait?
Yeah, so you can kind of see Prestel looking for those shapes in his hair. There's some kind of almost geometric shapes making that shape going around the top of his head. In his nose is very triangular. Those shapes are basic to us, and they might seem strange to draw on your paper right away. But once they're all connected, it's going to make sense and look like a face. And again, if you're using a lighter pencil, you'll be able to really erase all of these funny guiding lines I've drawn. I like to draw one down the middle of the face. I'm slightly tilted away from the mirror, so that's why I have the center line off to the side rather than straight down the middle. If I was looking straight at the mirror, I could do it straight down the middle. So it's nice to find one going down vertically and some going across the middle. And I made 3 lines here to kind of mark where my eyes would be, the middle of my nose, and maybe where my mouth would start. I jumped the gun a little bit by starting with the nose, but it's always a good director to me because it's pointy and it gives you an angle, and it kind of helps me to remember which way the face is pointing. So I have a triangle for my nose. I see there's kind of some circle oval shapes that build up cheekbones. My chin creates another circle.
Should we be like focused on getting everything right, or is this like much looser and sort of figuring out the drawing at this stage?
That's a great question. Right now, we're just figuring out. We're kind of laying a rough map for us to follow later. These shapes, hopefully, well, if you wanted them to be in your drawing later, you can leave them. But really, they're just going to act as guiders for our more permanent lines as well as our shading later on.
Okay.
So I see a circle in my nose. The tip of my nose is rather circular. And that bottom piece, this is my side nostril there. I can see that there's kind of a triangle that makes up the plane of the side of my cheek almost. And I'm just going to start drawing in where I feel like and these shapes, obviously there's not a circle on my face right here. But with the light, you can see that it's a little bit raised and it's rounded from the shading. So again, just because there's a definite oval here, that's not going to be what it looks like at the end. Maybe I have to give some shapes for my lips, made out of little circles and triangles. And then of course, I'll need to give myself some ovals for eyes. Again, we'll make all of this much more detailed as we move on, but this is a great way to kind of find your bearings of where everything's placed on the portrait. And a great way to not kind of get lost in all these shapes is use them as reference points. So I can look, this is the corner of my nose here. My eye starts almost at the same, like directly down along the same line as that. So you can kind of use your own face as a way to measure almost. There's kind of a
Are you using the mirror quite a lot while you're doing this, or is this kind of just checking in every once in a while?
I'm kind of looking up, looking down, looking up and down pretty often. Right now, since I'm just drawing shapes, I'm not looking too closely. But as you add more detail, you know, you really want to look at the slight changes of your lines and things like that. But for now, it can be very gestural marks that make up a face.
And have you always been a drawer?
I have. I've been drawing for as long as I can remember, really. I'm sure not always as skilled as I am now, maybe, but yeah, I always have been drawing and have been fascinated with art and what we could make out of random materials.
Would you say it's your favorite medium?
No, I think I'm probably most partial to oil painting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So this is probably a pretty good stopping point. If you have any other questions, I'm kind of ready to move on.
Why don't we take another look at the Prestel portrait, and you can talk us through that a little bit.
Great.
There we go.
So if we were to break down some of the shapes we could see in the Prestel painting, I mentioned his nose is very triangular. He has almost a rectangular shape at the top for his forehead. You could see where he might have thought of the oval that was created by his cheekbones. And maybe a hexagon or triangle up by his lip. And if you don't draw the shapes at first, that's totally fine. It's sometimes nice to just keep them in mind as you're drawing, if you maybe skip that step as well. His drawing is very gestural, so I imagine he was a pro, so he probably went through this. If this was not the first time, he probably went through it pretty quickly.
I just want to jump back in here and sort of use this opportunity to talk a little bit about the exhibition itself. As I mentioned, Splendor of Germany highlights the Crocker's really phenomenal German drawings collection, and also it celebrates the 150th anniversary of the collection. So I've been spending a lot of time reading through the catalog, reading William's essays, and just thinking a little bit more about the show. And I wanted to share some of the insights that I've gained in relation to the exhibition. So the exhibition essentially stems from three reasons. The first one being the beauty, condition, and the quality of the Crocker's 18th century German drawings collection make it one of the finest collections in the United States. In William's essay in the catalog, he talks about comparable collections being held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And so that's like, I think for the Crocker is really a wonderful feather in our cap. And then secondly, the importance of later German drawings in past decades has meant that this early collection has gained a new context. I think, if I remember correctly, in the tour that William gave us of the exhibition, he talked a lot about how this period in German art history is often overlooked as a sort of precursor to the Romantic period. So this exhibition is also sort of an opportunity to relook at this century of German works. And then finally, the breadth and the depth of the Crocker collection is so vast and so rich that it allows for an exhibition exclusively focused on this time period of the 18th century. So I thought that was really interesting to spend some time thinking about the show. I'll share a little bit more with everyone about Prestell's life and some more thoughts from William's catalog and some of the research that I've been doing as we progress through the rest of the evening. So if I switch over now to just Brianna and I. So Brianna, I know you said we reached a point now where we can take a break. I wanted to chat a little bit about what you do at the Crocker, your connection to the museum, and how you ended up here. So what is your Crocker story?
So I first started being involved with the Crocker when I was in college, and I actually started as an intern working on the art mix program with its previous coordinator. And then that led to me, of course, being so interested in everything else that we did at the museum, because everything's really interesting, all different parts. And then since I do have an education background, I then started working as an educator on our school and teacher programs team. So then I got to work on the art arc, give some tours, do our tour plus workshop program, which is really fantastic. And also do some of the camps that we provide. I think we're doing maybe one more digital one, which is very exciting and impressive of them to do. And then I moved over to working in public programs, some of the bigger events. I am lucky to have done kind of a little bit of everything over at the museum.
So you went from an educator to sort of like a music impresario, I like to think of you now. You pretty much manage art mix, audio muse, classical concert. In the music realm, you seem to do it all.
Yeah, it's kind of turned out that way. I've felt really honored to work with all of the amazing musicians and artists that I get to come in contact with through those programs. We get a really impressive range of artists and musicians from all over Sacramento, and for some programs all over the world, like our Global Rhythms concert. It's truly an honor, and it's so much fun.
And can you tell us a little bit about what went into putting that Jessica Fischer concert together?
Oh, yeah. So Jessica was scheduled to do our April Global Rhythms concert, or I'm sorry, our March Global Rhythms concert. But of course, once the shelter-in-place order was put in, we couldn't have a concert. But luckily, Jessica was willing and able to work with us to record that concert. If you haven't seen it, I think her and 4 other musicians recorded themselves separately performing their parts of the song. And then we edited the sound together and the video, and really our marketing team blew it out of the water. The Bryans, they really did a great job with it. And of course, Jessica is just an amazing musician and sounded fantastic. So it just ended up being something really special and nice to see in this kind of challenging time.
Yeah, no, I agree. And You make a good point about shouting out the Bryans and the marketing team. They've done a hell of a job transitioning from a marketing department to a production department almost overnight. And I remember when we were putting together the conversation with Christy Cortez for the first iteration of Thursday Nights in the beginning of the first week of April, Brian S. came into the auditorium with a hat on, and he had assumed a new role. No longer was he graphic designer, he was now film director. So that was pretty interesting. That was pretty fun. So whenever I think of being on tape, I see that image of Brian S. With his hat on, playing the film director role. And I think that's like something that's been very interesting to think about, is how we've had to wear so many different hats. Did you ever expect to be a content producer or an influencer in your lifetime?
Not at all. It really is amazing how many new skills we're having to pick up during this time. And it's been great to have something to learn.
Yeah, for sure. It's been a real learning curve. And for those of you watching at home, if you haven't had the chance, I want to steer you back to the Crocker's blog, The Oculus, where you can see all of our Thursday Night In programs. And then also to the YouTube page. The links to both should be in the video descriptions, either on Facebook Live or YouTube Live, where you can check it out. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. The more subscribers we get, the better. But that's also a good place to plug some events coming up in May. Thursday Night In is going live in May. So that's really exciting. We're sort of kicking it off here at the end of April. So everybody at home, keep your eyes peeled for an increase in live broadcast programming from the Crocker Art Museum. So I feel like I'm interrupting you. I'm stolen you from the drawing, so should we get back to that?
Yes, let's do that. So I wanted to show you guys a little bit more up close of what I've got here, just so you can really see the different shapes I've got going on, ovals and triangles and hexagons and trapezoids that all somehow make up what looks like a face. Get this guy back up here. So now that we have these basic shapes down and kind of blocked out where everything is on our face, it's time to start making the lines that actually make it look like a portrait. So, as I said, I always like to start with my nose because it's a good pointer. So, I can see, and I'm using a 3B pencil right now, again, because I wanted a darker one so that you guys can see. But now would also be a good time to switch over to a darker pencil if you were using something like a 2H or an HB, so that you can kind of define which lines are going to stay and which lines you might erase or let fade into the background. So you can go in, and some of the lines from the shapes I made will stay, like the edge of my nose here and my nostril. And then others you might start to put together from multiple shapes, kind of going down my forehead line, my eye, and I can see that my cheek pops out a little bit, so I want to go around the circle that I drew right here and go down. Again, I'm looking down at what I'm drawing and then right back up at my mirror, or if you're using a picture, looking at that picture. When you're drawing from observation, it's really important to really constantly be looking at the object or the form. That way you don't start kind of making up what you feel like it should look like. Sometimes that happens.
Share a few comments quickly, Brianna. I know the Bryans would appreciate this. Mr. Lee, these Bryan fellows sound pretty cool. I have a sneaky suspicion this might be one of the Bryans. Pretty cool. Oh, yeah, Bryan, content coordinator. Thanks, Patricia Callahan. So glad to be able to tune in. Thank you. Annette Richards, thank you for offering this drawing time. Loving the comments, everyone. Please keep them rolling. Back to you.
Yeah, thank you guys for participating. And even if you're just watching tonight, thanks for sitting with us and hanging out. I'm going in and kind of shaping my lips from those circles and triangles that I made. And it's okay if your lines are still very gestural and sketchy. You don't have to be very surely just making one mark on your paper and living with it. You know, remember, you have an eraser. It's okay to make mistakes and things that might look weird at first.
Brianna, now that you
Now
teach,
probably one of the hardest parts, eyes.
Now that you're teaching again, do you realize that you miss it?
I do miss it. I think that often, but luckily I do get a lot of opportunities at the museum to teach in lots of different programs. I've been a sketch night instructor at a few different ones. That's always a lot of fun. And every once in a while I get to teach a Tour Plus workshop again. So I'm lucky in that way.
And don't you have one coming up soon again, another drawing class?
Yeah, I'll be teaching a beginning drawing class, which will be through Zoom. And you'll need to sign up for that through our website. And I'll be teaching that with our Associate Director of Education, Mallory Marsh. So you get a pretty fun pair, in my humble opinion, for instructors. So it should be a good time. It's 2 weeks. We'll meet on Monday and Wednesday mornings.
Fantastic. And isn't Manager of Public Programs, Michelle Steen, also offering a drawing class?
Yes, she's offering a drawing class that I want to take.
Yeah.
She's teaching pet portraits.
I thought I saw, I don't know if that's a cat or a dog that kind of runs past underneath your table every once in a while.
Yep, I've got 2 cats.
Cool.
So for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to, I started these drawings in kind of phases so that you didn't have to watch me do every single little detail. Oh, we would be on here for a long time. So I moved on. I just did the same exact thing that I was just showing you, making those connecting lines, using those shapes to guide the lines you're making. And once you get to this stage, you can decide what lines you might want to get rid of as well. So I've got my kneaded eraser here. I'm going to give it a couple stretches to clean itself a little bit. And then I think I'm going to start taking some of those guiding lines and basic shapes out. So definitely that big line going through the middle of the face does not need to be there anymore. Maybe a few more. The nice thing about the kneaded eraser is that you can also just take away most of a mark. You can almost just lighten one by very gently rubbing it against the mark that you're trying to get rid of or lighten. I'm going to put that back, though I wanted it. So I just got a kind of basic line drawing going now. I haven't added any shading yet. And I know that Houghton worked really hard on making some some gifts for us about different drawing techniques.
Yeah.
Houghton, which ones did you make?
Well, I think I did some tone, one on cross hatching, one on sort of regular shading, and then one on stippling. Like I said, learning to be a content producer and influencer. Shout out to all the influencers watching at home. I never realized it was so hard. So I had a whole gift studio set up in my living room. much to my wife's displeasure when she got home yesterday. But those are all linked to the blog post for tonight's event, so go over to the Oculus and check it out. But thanks for shouting out, Brianna.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's try. I'm going to try to use or demonstrate some of those techniques that Houghton put on that blog post. And all of them are different ways to really build up the form and make it feel a little bit more 3D and not quite so flat and just a line drawing. So I went ahead and made a little value scale for us so you could see. Up here, I started with that 2H pencil and worked my way down to 6B. When you're making a drawing, it's really good to try to get a whole range of values in your drawing. You know, oftentimes we end up with everything way too light or everything way too dark. And it's important to find all those middle ranges that make something look full and round or three-dimensional. So
while you're transitioning, Brianna, I just wanted to share this wonderful comment from Jen. I was supposed to be volunteering for this tonight. Miss you all. Jen, we miss you too. Thank you for all you do for the project.
Jen. Oh, that's great to hear. I miss our volunteers so much.
Yes, agreed. And Ronnie, love the vocabulary, connecting lines. Thanks, Ronnie.
Hi, Ronnie. Okay, so now that we've kind of looked at what value is in this range we want to get, let's start with just building up some simple value within the drawing. And so I'm going to switch over to my HB pencil so that I'm not creating really, really harsh lines right out of the gate. You can always go darker, but it's a lot harder to go lighter. Okay, so let's start with cross-hatching because that's one that Houghton demoed in his gift. So cross-hatching is really just using a series of lines crossed over one another to create a value. So if the lines are closer together or overlapping more, it's going to look darker. Whereas if they're farther apart, it looks like a lighter surface. So I'm going to go in and I've left some of the shapes here so it can kind of guide where my shading is going to be. So I can see that there's kind of a shadow underneath my cheekbone here. So I'm going to start adding in some cross-hatching there. And try to be really light with your hand. Don't press down too hard. Keep your pencil moving. I think the best examples of cross-hatching is when you can really see the movement of the pencil. It doesn't have to be totally like robot still and perfect lines, right? So I've done hatching one way, and I think I'm going to go back in, and I think I need to erase a little bit more of this line. It's a little bit distracting, and you can edit this way as you go. I'm kind of just erasing it lightly so I can just barely see them here. They're still guiding my shading, but they don't need to be at the forefront of what I see.
Do you have your kneaded eraser in a particular shape right now?
I like to put it in a little bit of a point. That way I can only erase one particular part. But if you wanted to get a bigger surface area erase, maybe like this, you could go and make it flat. And it erases pretty well, just like any eraser would. But it is nice when you want to erase, maybe a tiny line for a highlight. That's when those kneaded erasers really come in handy. I'm going to come in and add a few more hatching on this end. And once I start adding the hatching going the other way is when you really start to get some definition, because you can see the difference between when there's two different directions of the lines versus one. It looks a lot lighter. And you can start changing the direction of your lines. Those lines will kind of suggest a curve if you want them to. So, for example, if I wanted to go work in my nose area, I might start doing some curved lines rather than straight across, so that you really get the feeling of the circular shape of that form. I think I'm going to do the same around that edge as well.
Brianna, while you shading away there, I'm just going to share some of installation shots of the exhibition with everyone.
Fantastic. Wow, that's a beautiful gallery. I miss them so much.
So where are we at right now, Brianna?
So I've added some cross hatching. Let's get a closer look. You can see the directions of the lines I've made here. In the nose, it's a little bit more curved. And then where they were overlapping a bit more along the cheekbone, where I might want to make a darker space.
Have you had much time to spend in the Splendor of Germany exhibition, Brianna?
I haven't gotten to see it much at all.
It's when you see it in pictures like that, it sort of really captures the feeling of the space, right? So sort of calm and meditative.
That was exactly what I was going to say. It looks very serene. That blue on the walls is just perfect for that. So now that we've looked at some cross-hatching techniques, one other technique that Houghton highlighted in the blog was stippling, and that's just making lots of little tiny dots. So it has a similar effect as the lines. The closer they are together, the darker that space is going to look. The farther apart, the lighter. So for the sake of you guys being able to see, oops, I'm going to use my charcoal pencil again. And maybe I'll start over here at the crease of my eye. Stippling is, I think, easiest to do with a pen or a marker because you can make those quick stabbing motions. But it's totally doable with pencils as well. I'm just kind of making little tiny dots. And maybe they'll get farther apart.
Brianna, you got a shout out from Christina Haig. Very cool.
Oh, thank you, Christina. You know, if anyone else is drawing along with us, we would love to see what you're doing. So snap us a picture, put it in the comments. We want to see it. I'm realizing now this almost looks like I'm making freckles on my face, but if I were to do the whole picture, I'm sure you would get the effect. Maybe I'll do some stippling over here on the other side as well. That knocking noise is just my pencil hitting my wooden table. Don't mind me.
I'm going to
So
add the
let's
personal portrait while you're working away so everyone can see.
let's get a closer look at this stippling also. So you can see the dots. So where he would have used maybe a charcoal or black watercolor to create his value, we're using cross-hatching or stippling.
And do you have a preference for shading technique based on the area of the face that you're working on, Brianna?
Say that again, Houghton?
Do you have a preference for shading technique based on the area of the face that you're working on?
Oh, for this, it seems to me that cross-hatching is working a little bit better than stippling because it's hard to cover a lot of surface with stippling if I'm using a pencil. If I had maybe a Sharpie or something a little bit bigger, it would go a lot faster. But sometimes that time you put in is what makes an art piece look great. I've seen some really great drawings with lots of teeny little pencil marks.
When I was making the GIF, I made sure to do the stippling before my wife got home.
It's just a teensy bit annoying to listen to, sure.
Oh, this is a really sweet comment. Patricia Ray, thank you for this class. I appreciate you both. Thank you, Patricia.
Oh, we appreciate you tuning in. So I'm going to switch back over to one of my darker pencils. That's not quite the charcoal. I'm using a 2B pencil now. So it's on the softer side of the lead or graphite, but it's going to make a darker mark. And I think I'm just going to start doing some general shading. So just moving my pencil as you might do if you were doing a rough sketch. I'm doing this because I want to show you guys how you could use a blending tool and maybe your eraser as well. So I can see there's a big dark area that comes down in the shadow of my nose. And there's some more here running into that stippling. So right now it's very sketchy looking. And if I wanted to go in with a blending tool, this is really just paper that's wound up really tight together that has a point at the end. So you can kind of aim it. And you just rub it right onto where you were drawing. And since it has a point, you can pretty much follow whatever shape you'd like. You could even use it to kind of bring down the shading. It's really just blending it, making it nice and smooth.
I want to share this image of Johann Christian Klengel's work because you get a real sense of the way he's used the cross hatching, especially on the clothes of the lady who's sort of standing over the table. I also really like this work because the title is Family at a Table, and that sort of aptly describes how we set up this evening.
That's perfect. Yeah, I think this collection of drawings is really a prime example of a lot of cross-hatching. It was a popular method, especially as you start looking into the rise of printmaking. A lot of the ways printmakers create value is making cross-hatching lines in there when they're carving their prints. Or, yeah. So now I'm going in and kind of blending out some of those cross hatches to make them look a little bit more together. Some people don't like to blend their lines at all. Some like to keep it as the raw marks. It's totally up to you. At this point, it's a lot of your drawings is going to depend on how you want it to look like. I could start making this a lot more gestural, like Prestel's drawings. If I were to maybe grab my charcoal pencil, and he has some great hair in that drawing, in my opinion. So if I went to try to look at my hair, see how he has like these quick marks coming up the top of his head. A lot of times when people draw hair, they try to draw every single little strand, and that's the mistake. You just want to do some quick lines that give the general movement of your hair, the direction it's coming down the side of my face. It's coming down. And as you're working, you could add more shading to the hair. You see he's kind of got it darker where it's more concentrated at the front of his head by his ears. So maybe I'll do the same here where my ear would be a little bit more concentrated lines. This is almost like cross hatching, just hatching. So really the direction and movement of your lines when you're doing hair is what's going to make it look more or less realistic. And I'm moving very quickly on this, so it's not the prime example of how to do it. I could even go in.
Brianna, do you have a particular preference for a style of drawing? Do you prefer something more gestural or something more sort of focused, realistic, naturalistic?
I'm a fan of the more gestural. I really like to see the artist's hand in their work. It's much more interesting to me. I think the same way about paintings, when you could see the little movement of the paintbrush or where they pressed a little bit harder. Maybe it's because I'm an artist, but that's the most interesting thing to me. I can feel it a little bit more, I guess.
Agreed. I feel like I'm on the same page as you with that.
So you can go in and start blending or using cross-hatching or stippling or even just traditional shading with your pencil or charcoal, whatever you've got, to start adding in a little bit more depth.
And Brianna, while you shading away there, I wanted to share with everybody at home a little bit about how the Crockers came to acquire this wonderful German drawing collections. So the family in 1869, they had just purchased the property at 3rd and O Street, and they set off for Europe, where they settled in Dresden. And in 1870, they took rooms at 17 Lutherstrasse, the address which they kept for over a year and served as their base for the European travels. So they spent time traveling through Europe and collecting objects from German-speaking areas of Austria and Switzerland. And the German drawings in the E.B. Crocker collection number 643. So that's quite substantial, especially strong in early German drawings, and includes the first Albrecht Dürer to enter the United States, which every time I hear that fact, I can't believe it, which is pretty amazing. So as I mentioned earlier, it's one of the largest collections of 18th century German drawings in the United States. And the other prominent collection is housed at the Metropolitan Museum of Art and was built up in the 20th century through gift and purchase. It's really starting to take shape now. The areas are starting to come together and the form is becoming clearer.
Yeah. The shading, the value changes are what's going to make your drawing feel more realistic. So don't be afraid to start adding even really light areas. Remember, I mentioned you want to get that full range of value tones.
I wanted to
So
share.
I want to make sure I get those very light shading areas as well as the nice and dark. So sometimes I like to reference my value scale and make sure, okay, I have those dark parts. I have some very, very light parts, and kind of check my work as I'm going this way.
I wanted to share Ginger's comment with you. She's drawing a dog who won't sit still. Is a good candidate for Michelle Steen's pet portrait class. This one's for you, Brianna. Carolina, thank you, Brianna, so much for teaching us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's so nice to hear from you all as you're watching. So it might be hard to see from the camera, but I'm still following that circle that was here, that oval shape. That was where the highlight of my cheek would have been, or my cheekbone. So that I can still see that circle a little bit. So it's reminding me to keep that area light and not shade in too much and lose the curve of my face there. And then, of course, I can go in and color in my eyes, which are especially hard to see through the glare in my glasses. I think that's about right for the placement. And I'm just going in dark at first. You can always use your trusty kneaded eraser and get a little point and erase a bit, and it'll treat it almost like a little highlight. I'm gonna go in and do that for the hair a little bit too. It got a little dark there. The kneaded eraser is just a really great editing tool. That way you can pick up just a little bit of your work, or all of it, depending on what you like.
The way you handle the kneaded eraser looks much better than me in the GIF.
It's almost like Play-Doh.
Yeah.
Stretchy and squishy. I remember spending lots of time in my drawing classes in college, just kind of zoning out, playing with a kneaded eraser.
Well, I know we're coming up close to an hour, so before we run out of time, I just want to remind everybody that there are some fantastic programs on our YouTube page. One of our educators, Crystal Ruiz, has done some great art activities for those of you who have little ones at home. So check those out. There's also some wonderful art and wellness programs from our Art for Meditation teachers on the Crocker blog, the Oculus, guided meditations and guided slow looking. So please be sure to check those out. Brianna, do you have any closing comments before we head off?
Just remember that your drawing is whatever you want it to be. So if I wanted to add cat ears to this drawing, I could. So just have fun with it, especially right now. We all just get to test things out without any judgment. Just do it. Make some marks.
Awesome. Thanks for showing us the way this evening, Brianna, and we look forward to seeing everybody at home live again throughout the month of May. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, guys.